Right, so I'm going to get straight in. Hello, thank you for all coming, I appreciate it. Some of you know me as a dry cleaner, others as the international lover and playboy, and most of you just know me as Ian, and today I'm going to show you something, and I'm going to talk to you about something that you've probably heard a little bit about, but you probably don't know the impact of it and what it's about. So thank you for coming and watching my presentation today. Nearly 4 years ago, I stumbled across what I think to be the greatest deception to mankind that there's ever been. I won't be the first to discover it, and I won't be the last, so just bear with me. And before we start, everything you see and everything I say, don't believe me. Don't believe a single word I say, because it's designed for you to go and have a look yourself. I think we get into a situation where we believe a lot of people and we don't actually know anything. And this is designed so that when I show you all the stuff and you go away, you can fully research all of it yourself. Going to do approximately 45 minutes, have a little break, and then another 45 minutes. I know it's a long time, there's a lot of information to get through. We've got cakes, we've got coffee, we've got water, etc. Questions and answers at the end, because some of the stuff that you might want to ask will probably be in the presentation anyway. So, without further ado, a couple of things for this new truth and this new reality. Reality as we are as humans, if we're not conditioned in any way, what we have to discover our surroundings is our five senses, our eyes, our ears, all the stuff you know. We literally, if we touch something and it burns, we don't touch it again. So we really learn to build an understanding of our world through the five senses that we have. Truth, however, truth is something a little bit different. Sometimes it's truth we take for granted by men in power, people in the white coats of academia, by which are all judged. And more so easily with television. We believe stuff we've not seen or experienced for ourselves just because it's on the television. Now, also, we would rather be told some comforting lies than some unpleasant truths, because the old saying is, the truth hurts, and it might hurt. So for some of you, it might cause an uneasiness or an uncomfortable feeling, because it's known as a psychological or neurological effect called cognitive dissonance, and it's something where you hold a core belief or core value so strong that if someone comes along with new information or evidence to the contrary, you get angry, and it creates this battling power within you where your ego comes to the fore and you get angry and you start shouting. Hope that doesn't happen. Now, with that in mind, this is where we live. We've all known we've lived here all of our lives. We don't know when we knew, but we know. Okay? This is it. This is all our consonants, that's all the bits. So because we've known all our lives, quick quiz, 4 questions, hands up. Who knows how big it is? Okay. Science tells us it's 24,901 miles in circumference. Okay, don't worry about that. I don't know what it is. Next question. Who knows how fast it spins? Easy one.
1,000 miles an hour.
Very good. Science tells us it's 1,040 miles an hour at the equator. Another question. How fast do we zoom through endless space around the sun? Okay. 66,000 miles an hour, science tells us. 66,000 miles an hour. Last thing. It's a globe. We can see it. It's got a curve. There is a mathematical formula which can enable you to measure the curvature of the Earth. Anybody know what it is? Slightly harder question. Anybody? It's 8 inches per mile squared, but we'll come back to that later. Couple of things. When I was at school, I remember being taught the sun, when I was very rarely at school, I remember being taught that the sun was in the middle of the universe, and it stayed there and it didn't move, and all the planets went round the outside in the orbit. That's what I was taught at school. This is the current scientific model. Oh, sorry about the music. It's gone nuts. I can't find the thing. There it is. I'm not interested in the music. The sun travels through an endless universe at 500,000 miles an hour, taking all of the planets and the bits with it in our solar system. We go round that at 66,000 miles an hour whilst we're spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. This is the currently accepted scientific model of our universe. I didn't know that. I thought it was something different. The point of it is, simple things we know or we should know about where we live, we haven't got a clue. We don't know how big it is, we don't know how fast it spins, we don't know anything about it. So could there be a possibility in the fact that we don't know anything about it is because we've been deliberately made to not know anything about it? Could we have been deceived? Well, this is why you're here. The research I've done, and that many have done in the last 4 years, is a subject that's led me to believe that the ancient ancestors of us were all correct. It's a flat, stationary plane, it's not a spinning ball, and it doesn't move in any way. We've also been lied to about what we think space is for at least 500 years. It's a big claim, I know, and I'm hopefully going to shed some light on it. Because throughout recorded history, every single civilization, Incas, Mayans, Egyptians, Hindus, and there's more, I'm talking every single civilization in ancient times, apart from an obvious one, knew that the Earth was flat. They thought it was a flat, stationary, disc-shaped plane. Now, this is commonly referred to as the flat Earth map. You'll notice various continents that you can probably recognise. We're about here. Now, all the ancient cultures believed that the magnetic centre point in the middle of their disc-shaped flat plane was right in the middle. And above the middle of this magnetic thing in the middle of their disc plane was Polaris. Polaris was the only star, they said, in the sky that never moved. Now, they used to believe in stars came in the two kinds. The first kind was the fixed stars. Now, obviously, the fixed stars, because this is Polaris, this is representing Polaris, it's not real. Because all of your constellations and all the stars were fixed in their relative positions night after night. We observe it year after year, century after century. And the wandering stars are things like Mars, Jupiter, all the things we know as planets, okay? Now, they have their own individual unique paths that we observe. They make spirograph-like patterns, retrograde motions forward, backwards, etc. Not all fixed in their relative positions. This is just a depiction of Venus on its 255-day cycle, which creates the flower of life, incidentally, if you didn't know. The ancients thought that the sun and the moon were the same size. They thought they were much closer than we're told today, and they moved around us, not the other way around. They thought the sun to be a warm, antiseptic, nurturing light, and the moon completely opposite. Okay, now this is the yin-yang symbol. You've all seen something similar in Asian culture. This depicts the sun's movement and the moon's movement over the flat Earth disk. Okay, here you have light going over the land masses and dark, etc. However, just to add to that, the yin-yang symbol, when you measure the sun's shadow length from the summer solstice right the way through in a year to the vernal equinox, it lengthens and shortens to create the teardrop of the yin-yang. Now, ancient cultures. They said that the sun began its journey in the Tropic of Capricorn, which is where our winter solstice, we're here somewhere. Sorry about the video quality on this. Where it made its largest circle over our flat plane. And for the next 3 months, the sun slightly narrowed its path until it got to the spring equinox, where it moved from the Tropic of Capricorn to the equator. And the next 3 months, when it becomes our summer solstice, it goes round in the Tropic of Cancer. It moves from there to the Tropic of Cancer, which becomes our lightest time, obviously, and our summertime. Now, once the sun makes its circle around the Tropic of Cancer, every 3 months and at the equinoxes, etc., it moves back out and back in all the time. It does exactly the same. This is what they believed. So, for centuries, throughout all of existence, ancient man knew the Earth to be the centre of the universe, okay, to which all the stars, the sun and the moon revolved around it in a dome-like pattern. Now, some cultures believed in a physical, solid dome. or firmament, as the biblical scripture will tell you. And some believed, that the centre point magnetic pole was the tree of life and that all the stars or the constellations were the branches. That's what they tell us. They also tell us that the southern circumference of their disk plane was a wall of ice 200 to 300 feet, which kept their oceans in. That's what we know, that's what we can learn. Now, some of the ancients believe that beyond the dome or the ice wall, there was more land, and a lot just used to think that it was the physical stopping point of the firmament for the flat Earth. Now, this is commonly known as a flat Earth map. This is from a chap called Alexander Gleason in 1892. What you'll notice, as you saw on the other flat Earth map, is you'll see the geographical land masses laid out, slightly different to what you know and what you've seen and what you're used to. But you'll notice there's a continent missing from that and from all other flat Earth maps. And that continent is Antarctica, because we'll come to that a bit more in a minute. Antarctica doesn't exist as a continent, as you know. It becomes the ice wall of the ancients around the outside of the flat disk plane. Now, this is Alexander Gleason's map. It was an as-is map. This is one from about 1,000 years ago, we're told, came from a Buddhist temple, showing perhaps our bit where we are and further land. There are literally hundreds, maybe thousands of flat Earth ancient maps, if you didn't know. Okay, and this one's quite important. This was done in 1920. This is the magnetic centre point north. Everything from that point is south, everything. So when you want to go east and west, and when you want to travel around the world, east and west become left and right circular motions around the disk plane. But we'll come to a bit more on that in a minute. No one knows what lies beyond the ice walls, okay? Not at all. And there's a big reason for that, because you're prevented from finding out by something called the Antarctic Treaty. But we'll come to that in a minute. What we can confirm is there are pictures. There are physical evidences of 200 to 300 foot ice walls in and around the solar South Pole, okay? We can also confirm that Polaris does not move. It never has, as depicted by these star trails here. If you don't know where Polaris is, you can do this yourself. You'll know the plough, you'll seen it, look at the last star on the pot there, look up. That's where it is. It's sort of on its own, it never moves. You set your camera on long exposure, you can do it if you wish. We can also measure, what we can confirm is we can measure that every constellation stays exactly relatively the same. Same as the ancients saw it, same as we see it now, night after night, year after year. And we can confirm, which we have done, the sun's journey through the tropics, through the equator, can be measured. Lastly, we can confirm that the Earth doesn't move, doesn't spin at all, okay? It's completely motionless. And the horizon remains perfectly flat as far as your eye can see. Now, the horizon also does something which you may or may not be aware of. It rises to your eye level no matter how high you are, okay? Try it yourself. This is me on the beach, about 50 foot up in Tenerife, in a very well-known bar, having a drink. 50 foot. And apart from it being a perfectly flat horizon, it's at my eye level. This is me climbing up a mountain at 5,000 feet. I say climbing, I'm in the bar. Horizon at eye level. Same on the plane, it's at your eye level, okay? Now, if we were indeed on a globe or any kind of sphere or a ball, no matter how high you went, you'd notice a drop in the horizon. What you should see is something like that. And what you actually physically see in reality is that. Try it yourselves. Like I say, everything is researchable, you can do all this for yourself. Now, I can hear some of you may be thinking, but one of the program responses we sort of get is, I've seen curvature from 30,000 feet out of an aeroplane. You haven't, okay? We've come to learn it's a pre-programmed response, okay? What you see, and the research we've had to do on plane windows, the 3-ply plastic, the air pressure holes, etc., Literally every end of one, they are curved. If you look out of the plane window, give yourself an inch either way, everything you see is completely flat and at eye level, or the horizon anyway. In fact, there is no, you might be surprised to know, no scientific test at all that can measure the curvature. In fact, some of them have failed, and they've proven to show that it's flat and motionless. Now, we're going to move on, because this is the history of flat Earth. This is going to show you where we are and how we've come to believe what we believe. And it starts off a long time ago. This is our friend Pythagoras. About 500 BC, he was considered to be a Freemason. He was fully entrenched in the mystery schools of Greece. He was an occultist and a very strange man. If you only know him for his 3.14159 pi equations, there's a lot more to him than that. Something you don't learn at school, they don't teach you that. Anyway, what he said was, if the Earth were indeed turning, it's fairly obvious we could explain the heavens and the stars above. But that theory never really gained any attention for 2,000 years outside of Greece. So, now what you have here is Aristotle in about 400 BC. Now, he thought the Earth was round because he said he could see ships disappearing over the horizon, over the curve of the horizon. And this today is still a widely held proof that people say that the Earth is round. Yet something simple like binoculars, a telescope, a half-decent camera is going to bring the entire vessel back into view. Proving that it's not a globe, it's not a sphere, it's just the end of your eye's ability and perspective to see. There you go. Now, next up, Eratosthenes. When you do some research on the globe, you'll come across all the things I'm saying, and people will tell you, this man Eratosthenes back in 250 BC proved the Earth was round, blah, blah, blah. They won't tell you how, they don't know. He was a geographer, and what history tells us, he's a geographer and a mathematician, and he tells of an experiment where he could claim to prove the Earth was spherical. In a place called Syene in Egypt, he knew that the solar noon overhead wouldn't cast a shadow in his well. Okay, and in 250 BC, he asked his friend, who was 575 miles away in Alexandria, at his solar noon, which is in the summer solstice, at whatever agreed time they must have done back in 250 BC, it must have taken them 3 years to organise that far away. He would measure the angle of the shadow cast from his wall. Now, sadly, he factored in incorrect distances for the sun, and the experiment failed. This particular type of experiment works on a flat surface, works on a triangle surface, it works on any surface, proving that it's not a globe. We found out some other information as well, that this is a complete bogus thing. When the history books tell you something and you believe it and you don't research, this is completely bogus, because the solar noon for Syene was a full 12 minutes after his mate in 575 miles away, and there is no documented record of anybody understanding that there's anything done about the solar noon differences in time. It's a complete bogus thing. This type of experiment, however, was proved ridiculous by the invention of this beautiful thing. Now, you've probably all seen it. This is a nautical sextant. It's the one that sailors use, they work out where they're going, etc. Now, with a sextant and a bit of something called plane trigonometry, you can measure the sun's angle at 2 different points on Earth simultaneously. When you factor in the Pythagorean maths, what you'll find is you can reveal the height and the dimensions of both the sun and the moon. And they have been repeatedly, and I'm talking repeatedly, calculated as having a diameter of 32 miles across, and they're about 3,000 miles from the surface of the Earth. Now, I'm going to show you something. This is how they measured the sun, sorry. Science tells us, science will tell us all, that the sun is millions of miles away, and all the light comes in parallel. When it gets to the atmosphere, it starts to refract and break up depending on the gases or the layers in the atmosphere. The problem you have, and I want you can see all this yourself next time you come. The sun's 93 million miles away, it's coming in parallel, but it only diffuses locally. Over here, for example, you're not seeing that. Over there, you're not seeing it. The sun is small and local. You'll only get it diffusing light based on where you see it, nowhere else. Next time you see it, follow the sun, ray angles up, that's where your sun is. These are called crepuscular rays. Ones come down are crepuscular, ones that go up are anti-crepuscular. You cannot have that with the sun being 93 million miles away if you're spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, because the sun is outside of our atmosphere, allegedly. Okay? The sun is not a gigantic burning gas giant 93 million miles away. It is not. There is, every time you see an image of the sun, it's from NASA or it's CGI, go and get a filter, go and look at it. It's just a yellow disc, okay? Now, what you'll also find is plenty of footage, plenty of experiments where they send up amateur weather balloon footage where you can see the flat horizon, you can see how things are. What you don't get, what you'll see here is a hot spot from the sun. There's not going to be a hot spot from 93 million miles away just at the top of the cloud. That's because it's local. This is another one, flat horizon, sun, reflection on the water locally. And when they tell you it's 93 million miles away doing all its wonderful thing, what we never question, it doesn't ever compute, but you cannot have a 93 million mile away sun changing angular size when it's 862 million miles, 1,000 miles across in diameter. It's literally because it moves above our plane and comes in and out of your perspective. Now, after our friend Mr. Eratosthenes, the globe model nearly vanished for a couple of thousand years. Cultures were happy that it was flat, they understood it, everyone's a winner. Until the history books tell us in 1522, this chap, Ferdinand Magellan, Portuguese fella, claimed to sail around the world. Now he went east to west, he didn't go north to south, no one's gone north to south. As I was explaining earlier, the magnetic centre point is north. When you have your compass, no matter where you are, here, it's always pointing north. So when you set off in your boat to go round the world, you go east or you go west, you start going east, and the problem is, the north always stays there, so east and west start moving. So in order to make you still going, aligning with north, it literally changes and you go round the earth. It's that simple. Now, no one's gone north to south because clearly if you went south, you'd hit the wall, no one knows what's behind it, and you're certainly not coming in that way either. Freemason. Sir Ranulph Fiennes says he's gone north to south, but there's no independent, verifiable information to prove it. That's simple. Now, pay attention, because Antarctica, what we know of as Antarctica now, which is this, is patrolled under the military orders of the United Nations, you might be surprised to know. This is the United Nations logo. Have a look at the logo. You've seen it a million times and you've never questioned it. You might see what look like some land masses there. How can that be? Why have I not noticed this before? There's no Antarctica on there, by the way, because it is the flat Earth map. The powers that be use symbols and they hide things in plain sight to the people that know the knowledge, and for those who don't know the knowledge, it doesn't matter. It's very important. Now we're going to move on. In 1543, ugliest man I've ever seen. Face looks similar to male genitalia, but I'm not going to say anything, okay? In 1543, this Freemason, Nicholas Copernicus, released a book days before he died called On the Revolution of Celestial Spheres. And what he did in this book is he fancifully revived the sun-centered universe first postulated by Pythagoras a couple of thousand years ago. Now, this book that he wrote taught of a spinning globe, wobbling, spinning and moving and tilting in all ridiculous directions. And it was laughed at the time by his peers. And one of his peers was Tycho Brahe. He was said that if Copernicus thought the globe was spinning and moving all the time, then why didn't the stars show any signs of parallax or lateral movement? They don't. Okay, so simple as that. They stayed the same all the time. So what Copernicus did, and this is what we know as science today, with no proof, he took them and he placed them billions and trillions of miles away. Now, because they're that far away, it would look as though they're not moving. There'd be no detection they could move. But we couldn't see anything that far. So what he did, apart from just placing them trillion miles away at will, he made them enormous. He made them millions of miles in diameter, suns or planets or whatever you want to think they are. That is where you get it from. However, and even back then his temporaries wanted to dismiss his theories, thought he was mad, but he offered numbers, okay? And when science offers you numbers, the numbers are absolute. Maths, you cannot fake maths, it's absolute. What you can do though is fake the reality that you're basing the maths on, okay? It's very important. So when he offered the numbers for all his wonderful nonsense in his book, he proclaimed that the sun was 3,391,200 miles away. You're not having the cakes, mate. And with that nonsense of calculation, it puts Polaris at 2,526,078,719,600,000 miles away exactly. Okay, that's what it puts at. Now, the man who was laughing at Copernicus in 1573, Tycho Brahe. He's a Danish astronomer. He was funded by Rudolf Emperor II of Germany to go and get the lavish, most best astronomical observatory for its time. No money was spared. Brahe used to make telescopic and non-telescopic views, wrote all his notes, and he was starting to make a bit of headway into understanding what the cosmology was. Until this Freemason, Johannes Kepler, came along. And Johannes Kepler was a Freemason, and he was a student of the Copernican spinning, wobbling globe thing. Heated exchanges were said to have been pretty bad, which resulted in this chap being fired from the observatory. Get out, you're not worth it. However, about a year later, history tells us he did a bit of grovelling, came back inside, started doing a few changes, and a month later, Tycho Brahe was mysteriously killed. This meant this chap became the imperial astronomical person for the time, for the emperor, and literally we're led to believe he stole some of the work to fit his own theories. But this man also had numbers. So what he did do is he confirmed that his mentor Copernicus was in fact an idiot, because the sun was indeed 12,376,000 miles away. Okay, we're going to move forward. 1608. Another challenger to the flat stationary plane, Italian chap, Galileo Galilei. He made telescopes, but he's very famed for his writings about the tides. What he did say was the tides and the pull of the water, whilst constantly moving on this ball in an upward direction, the slosh of the water made the tides work. Well, his calculations are a bit rubbish, because it only worked if there was one tide a day, and obviously completely ineffectual against lakes and other large standing bodies of water unaffected by tides. However, he did make a telescope, and he would have made Aristotle look a bit stupid looking at those ships going over the horizon nearly 2,000 years ago. Okay, the big one, 1687, Sir Isaac Newton. He wrote a book called Principia de Mathematica, which for the first time, thank God, presented his idea of gravity to the world for the first time, because for nearly 100 years, the thought of a spinning ball wrapping around became almost a joke to his scientific world. So in order to counter this, he invented something called what we know as gravity. Now, a couple of things with gravity. What we're told about gravity is it's a molten iron spinning core, which somehow magnetically, it spins and magnetically keeps everything to the surface of the Earth. A couple of things. All metal in a liquid state has no magnetism whatsoever. None at all. No metal, none at all. And something we had to research was, how the hell did they know how far the core down and what it was? Particularly back then, they had no clue. And they still don't know, because the furthest we've ever driven down is 7.6 miles into the crust. That's it. We can't go any further. That was done in 2010, I think, in Russia, the Kola well. We can't go any further. And the best ground penetrating radar that we have available will get you no more than 100 feet. That's it. So you have to start understanding what you've been programmed to believe and what you think science is all about. If you start using your senses, your God-given sort of things, you start to question things. But if you don't know there's a question to ask in the first place, you're never going to know. Now, it was at this time he was accused of having occult influences in his work. Okay, now I'm going to explain to you, gravity is merely density and buoyancy. That is it. That's it. It's not the magic force that keeps all the stars and planets from crashing into each other because one's got a bigger mass than the other. Nothing to do with it. But sadly, when the numbers of a fantasy keep getting bigger and bigger, it has to change each time theories don't work. So, I'm going to tell you something. I know he made up gravity. Later he realised that the calculations, or science later has realised all those calculations turn all of the universe gets squished into oblivion, and that's it. So they made up something else. They made up something called dark energy, basically anti-gravity, but the calculations have later found out that it rips away the fabric of space in a ridiculous speed. So they made up something else called dark matter, which holds them both, and that's it. There's no proof. All of this is baseless in proof. If an object is heavier than the air or the medium that surrounds it, it falls. It's very simple. Picture rain falling because it's heavier than the air around it. Picture water bubbles going up because it's lighter than the medium that it's in. That's it. Gravity doesn't pull the bubble down, doesn't do anything. It's nothing like you've been told. There are no laws in nature that attracts a heavier object, attracts a less heavier object to a smaller one. It doesn't work. If he'd have sat under that tree, he made no calculations for the apples still on the tree. And he wouldn't have been able to make any of these ridiculous calculations if it had fallen in the water and come straight back up. But Sir Isaac Newton had the numbers. He explained, he said it didn't really matter anything if the sun was 28 or 54 million miles away. No difference. And what you have here with science is telling you from Copernicus to where we are now, and it's gone over, there's 100 million miles difference there or thereabouts in what science has told you what the sun is and where it is. 100 million miles. 1773. I will go along, I know you're all a bit. Captain Cook, first man to reach the Antarctic ice wall. Okay, now Antarctica is supposed to be this island at the bottom of a spinning globe. Okay, this is a made-up landmass. This does not exist. It's the shape of a brain, right? That's another story. Now, what they tell us is the continent on the bottom of a spinning ball has a circumnavigation of about 10,000 miles. Captain Cook tried to sail around it to find an inlet, but he went 60,000 miles, and he couldn't, because this doesn't exist, and what he'd done is found the ice wall and gone around it that way. 60,000 miles is probably twice the circumference that they tell you that the globe is, right? I'm going to move on. 1783, the hot air balloon was invented, okay? For the first time in recorded history, you could go up yourself, and you could see if the horizon was flat or if it was indeed a ball, whatever you wanted. And of course, it's a flat plane as far as the eye can see. We move on into 1797, and this handsome young chap, he was a Freemason. He was a British scientist. His name is Henry Cavendish. He was a wealthy grandson of the Duke of Devonshire, and he claimed in 1797 not only did he create an experiment which successfully proved the existence of gravity, he said he could measure its constant, he said he could give you the exact masses for the Earth, the Sun, the Moon, all the stars and everything else. In 1797, how did he make this quantum leap of science? I'll tell you, because you know. He stuck 2 lead balls on a torsion balance in his shed. That's it. That's it. That's the entire experiment. He didn't even go in it. He stood outside with a telescope to see if he could make any observations of any movement. And from anything he decided to do, started making the numbers. That is how science tells you what size and how far things are away, how heavy the Earth is, how heavy the Sun is. That's it. You know? It's still widely used today as proof. And when you start to understand it a bit, if you think that's proof of the weight of Arcturus, whatever, then that's got to be down to you guys. But there was an equally ridiculous experiment by this chap in 1851 called Leon Foucault. You might have heard it, Foucault's pendulum. You've seen it, they still use it in museums and things today to show you that the Earth is spinning. Now literally it's a pendulum that they swing round and that's it. That's it. To me, that is not proof enough to show me that we're going 1,040 miles an hour at the equator. What happens to all the pendulums that don't move in the grandfather clocks because they've stopped? What happens to all the plumb lines that are down? They don't start spinning around. It's a fallacy, it's a nonsense. In 1864, I know we're coming up to the real life at the moment, a book called Zetetic Astronomy was written by a chap called Samuel Burley Rowbotham. He was a British inventor and an author. Now he's most famed for his Bedford level experiment, amongst others, in which he went down to Cambridge, where there's a 20-mile canal, complete stretch of water, no lock gates, no interruptions of any kind. It's perfectly straight and it's known as the Bedford level. Now, spherical trigonometry, I don't want to get too, maths or whatever. Spherical trigonometry dictates that every large standing surface of water must curve down at some point by an easily measurable 8 inches per mile squared, or 8 inches per mile multiplied by the square of the distance. Okay? So, along a 6-mile stretch of standing water, from one end to the other, science tells you there's a drop of 24 feet, 1 inch. Okay? 6 miles. Based on the size of the Earth that they tell you. Now, what he did was at each mile he stuck a flag. What he should have seen, his telescope was 8 inches above the water the whole time. What he should have seen, if we were led to believe it's a globe, is something similar to this. You see the first flag, second one, you might see a bit of the third. By the time it's the last one, it's 24 feet out of your sight. Obviously, what he did see was this, because it's not a globe. Now, this is important because in 1871, after a lot of pressure from flat Earth researchers, this guy was George Airy. He was the president of the Astronomical Society, and he wanted to devise an experiment that hoped would silence all these crazy flat earthers by proving that the Earth did indeed spin. So what he did was he filled his telescope with water, and the calculations were, when would he have to adjust the telescope to let the starlight flood in? Well, it was pretty obvious that the starlight was already there. He didn't have to turn it, proving that the sky moved, and we didn't. And it's called Airy's failure. So if you don't know about it, which you probably don't, it's a very good read. And the fact that it was a failure from the Royal Astronomical Society president lends quite a lot of weight, I think. In 1887, two very well-renowned American physicists, Albert Michelson, Edward Morley, performed an experiment to determine Earth's speed through space. Okay, so what they did, they passed a light through two pathways, one in the direction of the alleged Earth's motion and the other at right angles to it. To their surprise, what they found was that the light at right angles to it and the other one came in exactly the same time. So there was no proof at all of any Earth's motion. They couldn't prove it. Now, we get up into the turn of the last century, in 1900, okay? If you do any research on this, what you might want to do is look at all of the newspaper articles from the 1700s, etc. They're all digitised now. There are thousands of newspaper articles, absolutely thousands of articles about the flat Earth and the teachings of it, which we were probably never aware of. But this is just an example. This is in 1900, and it says Earth is round, may be thrown into prison. And this is quite interesting. It says it's painful to read that Sir John Gorst, the head of the British Educational Department, is in serious trouble and has been threatened by Mr. Ebenezer Breach and other taxpayers of the city of Portsmouth in the Kingdom of England, with a prosecution under the Impostors Act. And it seems that the schools of Portsmouth have been teaching the damnable and the heretical doctrine that the Earth is a sphere. This is 1900. Okay, 1903. Aeroplane was invented. Now, When the hot air balloon was first invented, people went up and they used to say, well, if it's spinning, why can't we go up in the air, the earth spins, and we can just come down? Well, the reason they can't is what they tell us is that gravity somehow stuck an entire atmosphere with the spin and everything in its place, dragging it along at 1,000 miles an hour so uniformly that you can't feel it, test it or measure it. Okay, that's what they tell you, that's what we believe. Now, when aeroplanes technology became a little bit better and they could fly faster or as fast as the supposed Earth rotation, it's fairly obvious nothing spins. Now, I'm going to show you something. This here is what you'll see on a globe. You'll know this, you'll recognise these land masses. When you research flight routes, a simple flight, what they'll tell you is Antarctica is too cold to go over. So the only logical way to get from Sydney to Santiago would be a straight shot across the Indian Ocean. It's the quickest, you could refuel there, wherever you wanted, even if you needed to for that distance. But what you find on a globe is it goes from Australia in the southern hemisphere all the way up to the northern hemisphere and then twice back down to the southern hemisphere. When you're on a flat map, those sort of journeys become pretty much the straightest distance between 2 points because they are the furthest distance apart. Okay, that's how we do our air travel. Same thing here, Johannesburg to Perth, southern hemisphere, northern hemisphere, twice the way down. It's the furthest distance between 2 points in a straight line there and thereabouts. You'll have fun if you ever do that. Okay, so over a decade had passed and the flat earth cosmology was part of the world until this chap sort of came along in 1916. Albert Einstein. He wrote his theory on general relativity in 1916 with one sort of fell swoop and a lot of media marketing campaign. The globe started to come back into the psyche of people where it had been untouched for a long time. However, as I said to a lot of people, questioning history and questioning everything else, I've later found out that Albert Einstein was a Zionist plagiarist. He used to cross-dress, wear women's clothes, married his cousin and her 2 daughters, gave his Nobel Peace Prize money to his wife to shut up, and they all lived happily ever after. Okay, these are the things you can find if you dig deep enough. In 1927 was the first year that the Big Bang was ever first theorised by this chap. It's not Mr. Chumley Warner from Harry Enfield. It's a chap, he's a he's a Jesuit Roman Catholic priest by the name of Jorge Lemaitre, which no one's heard of. Okay, now the Big Bang, just very simply, is in a time when no one knows, there existed one thing, and that one thing was absolutely nothing, and then for no reason, nothing exploded and created everything. That's it. Where could you get such a stupid idea from? I have no idea. Oh, right, okay, you must have known, got it from him. Now, 1931, this is not Arsene Wenger. This chap is Auguste Piccard. He is a Swiss physicist and an inventor, and he was known for his record-breaking balloon flights to reach the higher reaches of our atmosphere. And in an article in Popular Science magazine in 1931, it describes of his fraught journey when they went 9 miles up trying to plug some holes in their thing, okay? Now, in this big balloon, which is here, this is the only picture we can find of it. This must have been a photo opportunity. Wife and kids come in, how you doing, how's work? Oh, photo, but we've all got hats on, you haven't. Grab the waste paper bins, straight on, everyone's a winner. Now, as he was going up, he is quoted as saying, through one of the windows, that it seemed a flat disc with an upturned edge. This is in 1931. Okay. Now, the next decade or so, the Earth was being openly discussed and lectured in as many places as people could find. The Second World War breaks out. Okay, so people were worried more about the V2 and living than anything else. Now, the Second World War comes along. And like I said, this is where it all starts getting really, really strange. In 1945 to 55, something called Operation Paperclip took place. which was where they granted about 1,000 American physicists, Nazis, all the top people, safe passage to be an American citizen. They brought them up through South America. You probably, some of you may know this already. A lot of them Gestapo, Nazi members, very, very top clever people. This chap in particular, Werner von Braun, okay, he was a rocket scientist, and we'll come to him a bit later. He died in 1977. He was the grandfather of rocket technology. He designed the V2 rocket. He designed all the rockets and propulsion systems for the Apollo space program. The grandfather of rocket technology. This is his gravestone, that's it. Nothing too important there. Psalms 19:1. We'll come to that in a minute. In 1946, something took place called Operation High Jump.
That's the thing I showed you.
And it was led by a chap called Admiral Richard Byrd. He was the American naval officer specialised in exploration, recipient of the Medal of Honor, all-round Indiana Jones American guy. He'd been going to Antarctica for 20 years before that, first one in 1928 with sailing ships it was. Many believe, as the name suggests, Operation High Jump, that he went over the 200-300 foot ice wall. This was the time we were doing it. It wasn't an ordinary expedition. He took 4,500 men, 30 odd ships, 20 odd aircraft. It was enormous. Something massive was going on in where we call Antarctica. But I'm going to bring you up a little bit further in time to 1957. Okay, 1957 is where Russia was alleged to have launched this, the first satellite, or toilet system, round thing with 4 Cortina aerials off the side. Now, satellites, as we know them and what we've been programmed to think, were first theorised by Freemason and author Mr. Arthur C. Clarke, which you may all know about. Now, satellites. Science will tell you there are upwards of 20,000 satellites zooming round our pretend globe Earth at any one time. But what they do tell you also is that they float around in something called the thermosphere, right? That's where they stay, the geostationary ones, whatever ones they tell you there. 90% float around in the thermosphere. And the problem is with that, the degrees of temperature are upwards of about 4,500 degrees. So, every metal element and component that's used in a satellite all have significantly lower melting temperatures. For example, the metals like aluminium, bronze, gold, all the stuff that they use. Aluminium, 1200 degrees. Gold, 1945 degrees. The only thing that's higher than where they should be is tungsten, and they don't make anything with tungsten. So what you're going to find is they would all melt, they would crash into each other all the time, and you'd see it. The reason it doesn't is because they do not exist how we have all been led to believe what satellites are. Now, with all these satellites around, you know, which you saw the 20,000, you can't even get a phone signal in Worth, right? So, you know, you have to start thinking about what you do. Now, if you do look into this, what you'll find is things like the Decca Navigator and the Loran ground-based systems all worked perfectly well before the indoctrination of satellites and the space technology required. And nowadays you've got all of your internet is done via undersea cables, all fibre optics, no satellite involved, all fibre optic cables. You get all of your gigantic cell phone towers triangulate your ground positioning systems, etc., and ionospheric propagation. You can bounce radio waves all round or all across the globe, right, without satellites. Now, it starts getting a bit weird from here. This is 1958, and this is Operation Deep Freeze. Now, it was conducted in Antarctica by our old friend, Admiral Richard Byrd. And this was 1958, and in the same year, the very same year, this thing was formed. You'll know it as NASA. Okay, and 1 year later, just 1 year, the whole thing took 18 months from this operation for NASA to be formed. The Antarctic Treaty was put into place in 1959. And all these three events are very key because you start to work out why these events were put at that specific time, all roughly in the same time with each other. Now, Admiral Richard Byrd was a Freemason, okay? He tells us of things where we have to research. Now, bearing in mind there's a thread of Freemasonry throughout the entire history of Flat Earth, you have to take it with a pinch of salt. But this is what he said, 1954.
Well, it used to be a no man's land, but these are the days when, by buying a ticket on a commercial airliner, you can fly across the North Pole and drink a cocktail at the same time. You know, only 30 or more years ago, about 35 years ago, our guest tonight found out whether there was any land north of the North American continent. He made that first discovery flight, and I must say that Admiral Byrd, our guest tonight, is not only our greatest living explorer, but he's been an inspiration to countless Americans. Admiral Byrd, you've been to both the North Pole and the South Pole. Is there any unexplored land left on this earth that might appeal to adventurous young Americans?
Yes, there is. And not up around the North Pole, because it's getting crowded up there now, because they find out it's really usable, not only to live in, but militarily. But strangely enough, there's left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being. And that's beyond the pole, on the other side of the South Pole, from Middle America. And I think it's quite astonishing that there should be an area as big as that unexplored.
This is a tremendous
So there's a lot of adventure left down at the bottom of the world.
Admiral, do you hope to see that?
I do.
Okay, he does. An area as big as the United States that no one's seen. Okay? That bit bizarre. Now, what could have all these Antarctic expeditions really have been about? You know, had they enabled mankind to find further lands? We don't know. Had they enabled them to find the firmament dome edge? We don't know. They could have found both. One thing we do have as evidence is a series of pictures by a chap called George Rayner in the 1920s. He was a photographer and a biologist, I think, and he took there's a whole series of these. You can look online, you can check your archives. The sky looks quite compelling to me from that particular issue. Like I say, this is just one. There are a whole series of them. There could have been. We don't know. It's quite a compelling sky. But whatever it is they found down in what we now know as Antarctica, we're not going to find out. They wanted to keep it from you and me. Okay, now this is the Antarctic Treaty Room. I know, it's bizarre. It has, I couldn't even tell you what the esoteric meaning of this is. Capstone, this triangle pyramid. No idea. This is where they did the Antarctic Treaty. This is where they do all the thing. It was signed in 1959, December the 12th, by the 12 countries whose scientists had been down on the Antarctic shoreline doing their thing in the great geophysical year of 57-58. It was ratified in 1961, and to this day it's still in place. I don't think it's even up for review until 2080 or something stupid, which is bizarre. Now, you won't get anywhere near where you think Antarctica is. You can pay about £20,000, go and see some penguins on the shoreline. If you're really lucky, you might get taken up to the research station, but you are not going over the wall, and you are not privy to seeing extra land. If they truly found the edge, okay, then surely there must be a top if our prehistory and ancient cultures were correct. How high did it go? What are the implications? Well, in 1962, they found out, or they tried to find out. In 1962, there was something called Operation Fishbowl, and I kid you not, that is the name of it. It's Operation Fishbowl. It was part of a series of nuclear high-altitude tests, part of Project Dominic, and they were sending them up for 4 years, okay? As high as they could go and detonate them as far as they could go. For me, with the bits I've done, I think they were literally mapping the dome, trying to find out how high the firmament was, but that's just my personal opinion.
Nike Hercules. Stripey XM33. 4.
Freemason, there's a traceable history, which if you don't know, I'll tell you. There's a lot more video footage of this showing them detonate at high altitude.
Johnston Island was the center of launch and experimental activity for the 1962 high-altitude weapon effects testing termed Operation Fishbowl. In the high-frequency experiments, burst-induced ionization altered propagation conditions, but caused no widespread outage. After the detonation, usable frequencies tended to be higher than pre-burst values. On some paths, propagation conditions were enhanced by the creation of new modes or paths.
Okay, that's what they tell you the operation was about. However, in the close proximity to all the other things that we know, we believe it's something different to what they were telling us it was. Now, at this time, it's the 60s, okay? So space travel's starting to get put into the minds of people. You've had television, you've had cinema, you've had the recent advent of sci-fi movies, massive loads of them. So that sort of thing was being firmly indoctrinated into your minds. And this leads us on to NASA and the fake moon landings. Right, this subject is enormous, okay? It's a whole day on its own, but I'm going to try and condense it as best I can. Firstly, what you need to know, the reason Freemasons and secret knowledge schools exist is simply to keep the information from people like us. That's it. We are not privy to it. It's a big club. We're not in it. And to be an astronaut back in the day, you had to be a Freemason because you were protecting something. You were doing something secret. Now, as we know, NASA was made in '59. Now, Buzz Aldrin Jr., 33-degree Mason, Montclair Lodge, number 144, New Jersey. Edgar Mitchell, Order of Demolay Mason, Artesta Lodge, New Mexico. James Irwin, Colorado Springs. Don Eisel was a member of the Luther B. Turner Lodge. Gordon Cooper was a Master Mason at the Carbondale Lodge in Colorado. Virgil Grissom, blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on and on. Fred Kleineck, who was the head of NASA at the Apollo, after the Apollo program. Shortly after that, he became the Sovereign Grand Master of the Council of the 33rd degree of ancient and accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. Okay. Now, the amount of families and people involved in the entire Apollo program is, with beyond question, Freemasonic. Now, there's a few pictures here. Lovely smile. Here we are. There's the boys. Don't forget to put your Freemason ring in, Buzz. You know. Oh look, there's the globe. We haven't been up yet, but there you go. That's probably the only time they actually landed on the moon. And what's that? What are these Freemasons doing here with the lunar lander? Oh, quick photo opportunity. By the way, just off, anybody use Google Mail? Anybody use Google Mail? This is the logo for Google Mail. And if you don't think it's a Freemasonic thing, if you don't think you're being controlled in that way, you are. Now, another couple of pictures. This is them just training, obviously. This is a bit bizarre because this is him in a zero-G plane with a mock-up of the lunar lander. Why are they filming there? Make your own mind up. This is a picture. All of these pictures that I show you are either NASA or properly approved in scientific stuff. This is an official NASA image of the lunar lander module that was on the moon. This is it. You've probably never seen it apart from when it takes off at the end in that thing, it's like a little model and all the little colours come out as rubbish. If you look at these things closely, which you may or may not need to study, this is roofing paper. These aren't even set, they're not closed. These are curtain rods, this is tin foil. That's not even rainproof, let alone spaceproof. Now, if you've not looked into Freemasons, and I'm not talking about the guys where, you know, you do that for me and I'll do that for you, not at a local level in Swanage, I'm talking about the higher elite echelons of Freemasonry. George Washington, Freemason, and first president. Okay. That's how powerful they are. Now, all presidents, MPs and mouthpiece controllers that we know of are either affiliated to Freemasonry or some other brotherhood and sisterhood. They're their clubs, we're not in it. We're not allowed in there. This is something else showing some Masons at work. You all know this, you've all seen this. Freemasons manufacturing the globe. You wouldn't believe it, would you? Okay, so listen, in 1969 to 1972, we are told the Freemasons of NASA have landed 6 times on the moon. Not once, 6 times. So with an ingenious bit of deception, bit of rocket technology from our man Werner von Braun, these lying Freemasons took photographs through a high altitude plane window. And with this one psychological operation that they showed to the world, it got nearly all of us believing exactly we live on this globe. Okay? Don't take my word for it. Don't take any of my words for it, because there is a video called A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon. I don't know if you've seen it. If you haven't, watch it. It's very important. And it shows NASA footage of Apollo 11 astronauts Buzz, Neil and Michael Collins for almost an hour making these transparencies. Like I say, don't take my word for it.
And finally,
Have a look.
the element that seals their fate. Of all the footage of Apollo 11 requested from NASA over a 5-year period, one gem was discovered just before the completion of this documentary. An old reel received by mistake. It contains the raw or unedited footage of the crew of Apollo 11, Michael Collins, Edwin Aldrin Jr. and Neil Armstrong, staging part of their mission for nearly an hour in living color, with exceptionally clear behind-the-scenes audio of conversations discussing the techniques used to achieve a disingenuous picture depicting the Earth at a distance, in order to falsely demonstrate their far journey from it and their ability to survive passing through the Van Allen radiation belts. It cannot be misconstrued that this staging was done for some other reason prior to the mission, for the reel itself is slated and dated July 18th, 19th and 20th, 1969, the very days of the mission when they were said to be approaching and achieving lunar orbit. Furthermore, it is apparent they are in genuine zero gravity aboard the actual spacecraft, necessary to convince the mass media of their authenticity, just not any further than Earth orbit, as you will see. In this never-before-seen or heard footage, not only is the radio conversation between the astronauts and Houston Control audible, there is a secondary, private conversation taking place between the crew and a third, confidential party, prompting the astronauts with what to say, when to speak, and how to effectively manipulate the camera to achieve the desired misleading effect. NASA claims that the Houston transmissions were the only ones taking place with the astronauts. Listen now as Houston Control initiates a conversation with the crew, only to find them too preoccupied with the behind-the-scenes trickery to respond. Moments pass and the oversight is picked up on by the clandestine third party, who quickly prompts them with talk. Immediately, Neil Armstrong speaks.
Hello, Apollo 11. Houston, Goldstone says that the TV looks great. Over. Okay, Roger.
Again, the illusion they are attempting to create is the Earth at a distance to demonstrate their far journey from it and their ability to survive passing through the Van Allen radiation belts. Understand, too, that only about 20 seconds of this raw footage was ever broadcast to the public, and these conversations discussing their deception were believed to be private until now.
Right. She says it cannot be misconstrued they're trying to achieve a disingenuous picture. If we live on a flat plane that has a firmament, the reason they are trying to achieve a disingenuous picture is because you can't go high enough to get all of the Earth in. The firmament's there, you can't go past it. That's it. Otherwise, you just go up there, put a video on, show you a picture of the Earth. They're achieving a disingenuous picture because you can't get there. And we didn't know why. A lot of people say the moon landings were fake. We had no clue. It makes a lot of sense now we understand the shape of the Earth. Now these images showing this trickery, they took one one image in 1972 that just happened to be on the way back. They thought, oh, we must just take a picture of the Earth. They didn't. They disingenuously made the picture. And the picture was the Freemasons' most valuable tool into working out why we all, or most of us, believe we live on this globe. Now, these NASA images, sorry, that's bottoms of frying pans. These NASA images, these are all genuine NASA-released images of Earth. Okay, you'll notice in some of them, this one, I think there's just a bit of land there, there's nothing here. I'm not sure if that's meant to be America or South America. You see various different colourings, various different cloud formats, and in 2012, North America became quarter the size of the whole planet. Okay? Now they look different because of this chap, and many like it. This guy was called Robert Simon, and he worked for Goddard Flight Data Center. And he is responsible for creating the latest in a long line of fake images of Earth. Okay? Now, every single one, and by his own admission, are photoshopped, or whichever, I think it was photoshopped back in 2012, the highest version they had. They're all photoshopped. Now, there's plenty of audio and video interviews of him telling and explaining it. But what he does at Goddard is he takes Earth science data, someone will phone him up from the plankton department and say, we've got a lot of phytoplankton in South America this year, and he says, thanks very much. He goes to where South America is and starts making up the colours of what he thinks it might be. This is what they do. There is no real picture of Earth from space. There isn't one. Okay? So basically, when these pictures are shown to you through the television, it's a verifiable proof that it's a globe. That's all we see, that's all we know. With a skeptical eye, however, you can see that with professional photo analysis, thousands of NASA images have been dissected completely to show undeniable proof of computer editing. For example, images of Earth allegedly taken from the moon. The actual image, if you can still find it, they've redone it a lot by now, but the original image of the Earth and the moon it's just pasted in. It's copied and pasted in. If you adjust the brightness and the contrast levels on lots of things, you can see where they've made the cuts and put the stuff in. I've done it myself with a satellite image from NASA, and it's ridiculous. Everything is photoshopped. It's not real. Now, still with the moon, a couple of pictures of the moon, a fake landing. This is a runner for the camera, obviously showing you models there. This is him doing some nonsense with the runner tracks for the cameras. He's obviously just doing whatever he's doing. Now, the moon, whatever you've been taught about it, is not what you think. It's a translucent line. You couldn't land on it even if you wanted to. In the daytime, with this sort of thing here, you can see the sky through it. Why is that crater blue? The sky is blue. Why can I see sky through it? Because you can. It's a light. It's not a solid object. There is plenty of footage showing, with decent telescopes, stars can be seen through the darker part or the shaded part of the moon. Plenty of footage online. Go and look. Do it yourself. Now, the moon itself, we're told, is a sphere. We're told it's a round object. It's not. Two reasons why. If it was a round object, you would have the light coming in on a hot spot and then fading off to the edge. This is what happens on all spheres. This is how light works. With the moon, next time you look, you have even light from the side through to the middle, through to the side. It's fully illuminated. Okay, it's not a sphere. Hidden in plain sight again, some flags with the stars through the moon. It's a thing. But you know what? There must be some evidence of man's greatest achievement, okay, going to the moon. You know, there must have been. But everything's been lost, destroyed. okay? And it's all disappeared, never to be seen again. And I'm not talking 20 reels of data, I'm talking by NASA's own admission, 13,000 reels of data gone for the Apollo missions. Funny that? Don't take my word for it. Don't take my word for it. This next idiot is a NASA astronaut. He's going to tell you.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
Really? Anybody from Mars? We can't go back to the moon because we don't have the technology? He's an idiot. I can't say any more than that, but you'll do your own research on it, you know. Now, the Apollo space program is completely fake. Completely fake. You'll see here some of the protagonists of it, a NASA advisor, Frederick Ordway, Donald Slayton, a NASA astronaut, next to our other Freemason friend, Mr. Arthur C. Clarke, with film director Stanley Kubrick, and George Muller, a senior administrator of the Apollo project. Okay, what are the chances? Lastly, with the moon. That's not the moon. Lastly, with the moon, and this is something we can attest to because we've done the experiment ourselves. Science tells you that the moon reflects the sunlight. It doesn't. It's self-illuminating, has no reflection at all of the sun. And the reason I know that, and the reason you can find out yourself, is because if you get a thermometer and you place it in the moonlight and then you place it in the moon shade, the moonlight will always be colder, instantaneously colder. If you didn't know, you can try the experiment yourself. It proves it doesn't reflect the sun's light because it would be warmer. It's colder than the moon shade. Okay? The thing you have is the faking of space, from my opinion and my research, is fundamental into making you think that there is this massive world outside of here and that you are incredibly insignificant. You're just a small speck in the asshole end of nowhere universe, and that's it. You're not. You're incredibly important. The problem is the space agencies control the higher regions of space, they control the Antarctic Treaty, you can't go anywhere, and all of this stuff is off limits to would-be independent explorers. I'll bring up to 1986. Space Shuttle Challenger. We all saw it, did we? Most of us? We all saw, sorry, you weren't born then, were you? Most of us saw it. We all saw it blow up on the great brainwashing TV set. Terrible. Pay attention. Just to these two to start with. Sharon McAuliffe, Judith Resnick. All alive and all very well, thank you very much. These two still use their same names and they're lecturing, or they were up until 8 months ago, still verifiable. I think she does Yale and she does Harvard. You'll have to go and look, but you can look, you can find out yourself. Dick Scobie, or he's called Dick Scobie now, he runs a marketing company in America called Cows in Trees. Every one of these people is still alive. Can't find any information on this bloke, maybe he is dead. Okay? Just to show you a little bit, I'm going to play this to you. Pay attention, it's not a very big video. This is of the space shuttle back in the 80s.
Operation, sort of monitoring the motion of the vehicle.
They're going to launch a satellite in a minute from a space shuttle.
There you go. Very few
there it goes.
vibrations of any sort. Here's a picture of the INSAT actually being deployed from the spacecraft. You can see that the deployment went very smoothly at the moment.
Right. Did you see it? Yeah. Did you see it? Did you see him? Yeah. Do it again, shall we? Right.
Our the INSAT and the pilots
no idea what this is,
operation,
but the best bit's the important bit to come. And if you're not aware, of any trickery or deception at all, you're never going to know this is a model and this is a bloke with his nose here.
There's a picture of the
That's his forehead, he's in the shot. We'll see a lot, okay? There are tons and tons of video examples of how the deception works. But like I said to you earlier, if you're not aware, you don't even know there's a question to ask, okay? Now, 1988 this brings us to. This is the construction of the ISS that we all know about. Some of us have seen this light in the sky and we are convinced that it's travelling, they tell us, at 17,500 miles an hour. I don't know if you've ever seen a plane do 1,000 miles an hour. When you see that light, it ain't going anywhere near that speed. And it's just a light. What it is, I don't know. It is our boys, NASA's finest. Window, 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 window. No window. On the space station, are you sure? Well, look, this guy knows. He's got the key. Clearly, the key to all of these windows. Because that says, keep closed when taking photos. There are tons and thousands upon thousands of videos, pictures that you can all research, and you will see the deception for yourselves, okay? Now, these are all official NASA images, by the way, which you'll learn yourselves. This is fabulous, straight out the window, some great spacey stuff. Oh look, there's the Earth. Oh, they forgot to put the rest of it in. Okay, it's official NASA image. But don't worry, this bloke will save us, because he's out here working on this bits of tape, plaster or something there, but he's there, he's having a great time. The problem is, he did put his shoes on the wrong feet, on the right feet. Look at it. This is space, this is space's finest astronauts. You're being deceived. It's as simple as that. You've got that. When you look for yourself, if any of you research or take something from this, you'll have field days going, what is that? What's that? Because you've not been aware of it before. And it gets worse. Now, there are lots of documents as well. Up in the videos and the pictures, tons of documents from the CIA, FBI, Army, Navy, all of the military. For NASA themselves. This is a document, 1988. It says a flat, non-rotating Earth. It was concluding remarks from the Ames Research Centre, and it says, this report derives and defines a set of linear systems and matrices for rigid aircraft of constant flying mass in a stationary atmosphere over a flat, non-rotating Earth. Why? It's a globe, isn't it? Why? There is tons of evidence. Now, okay, this next video, these are some you see, right, where the general thing that they do is when they're having these transmissions and you sit on the telly and they go, tell us you're in space, what can you do to prove you're in space? And 9 times out of 10 they do this somersault thing, right, to prove. The only problem with this is, there's a problem with it, because it gets caught up.
I don't know, we're going to have to do something.
Do something to prove. Panic, panic, panic. Don't pull the wire. Do not pull the wire. Don't pull the wire. He pulled the wire. He pulled the wire. Don't pull the wire. Oh, he pulled the wire. She's trying to get the wire from up there. He's trying to get the wire. Panic's ensuing. Most people have bought that. They've not looked at that logically and they've not seen it. Now, this video, the next one I'm going to show you, because I need to explain to you how you're being deceived. They use virtual reality, they use layers. They use virtual reality layers. They use a harness system which is called Argos, and it's the one that they use in movies. David Copperfield floats around in it, blah, blah, blah. It's the same system. And they try and mask out the wires with the virtual reality layers that they put in. Films like Gravity, ironically enough, it looks so real, and that was made with a budget of $100 million. NASA, in 2017, had $52 million a day as their budget to bring you crap like this and CGI photographs. And they've had trillions and trillions of dollars since the 60s. Okay? Now, this next video is bizarre. Okay? This typically, and there, like I say, don't take it away, there are tons like this. This will typically show you how they cock up their virtual reality layers. Okay, and what you're going to see is there's no sound here. First layer they've made a mistake on is they've left his harness on in the background. Okay, there's normally a filter that will come through. You don't see it. And you wouldn't see an idiot with his stuff on, right? This is even more bizarre in a minute because he throws a guinea pig, right? And I didn't even know that. I think there's some esoteric occult meaning for it. I studied it before when I first saw it, but it's just to show you that, you know, it's clean. Now this is where the virtual reality stuff goes wrong. That hat is not there. There's the guinea pig flying in the background. This hat is not there. He's looking at a screen, and he looks at a screen sometimes. Oh, there's the guinea pig. Look, whatever, you know. None of it's real. This hat isn't there. It's a virtual reality layer, and I'm going to explain it to you, and you're going to see it, because he tries to grab it in a minute. There's a hat, mate. Put the hat away. There you go. Cheers, Dave. I will. Thanks very much. Let me grab it. Oh, yeah, look. And let me look in the screen, because I can see the virtual reality layer, but, oh, shit, I didn't take it in real life, okay? This is how you're being deceived. It's that simple. It really is that simple. And whether you want to believe it or not is up to you. The research is there. You know, you can go and look. This is another virtual reality fail. They're not there. They're implanted on a virtual reality layer, as is some of the front. All the rest is whatever, someone's shed, I expect. And this is them. They're saying goodbye. See you later, guys. Thanks, Houston Control. We're going. Oh shit, someone's turned off the virtual reality layer before the camera feed. Okay, very simple. Panic ensues and they cut straight to the NASA thing. That's how you're being deceived, okay? It's as simple as that. Now we're coming pretty much to the end. A few things I want you to consider is they tell us that stars are suns. They're not suns at all. They're frequency points of light that vibrate and oscillate in various frequencies and colours. That's it. What you find is these are real images that you can look through a telescope, a decent camera, and this is what NASA gives you with CGI to make you believe certain things. There are tons and tons of them. Go and compare reality with what NASA give you. This is just a video of a star, a changing energy frequency and vibration, which is what we understand the universe to be. Now, as I said to you before, there is no scientific measurement at all available for the measurement of the curvature of the Earth. Every year they have the longest photograph zoom competition, right? It's a big thing apparently. This guy, 10,000 feet up a mountain, he zoomed his camera out to see various mountain peaks, which he knows he can work, 443 kilometers away. You know, that's an awful long distance away if you're living on a spinning, curved Earth. This is what science tells you how to measure it, okay? It's the full thing. You get the radius and you can measure the curve of the Earth by the 8 inches per mile squared. That's how they tell you, and what they tell you the size of the Earth is. We'll just do 50 miles. 50 miles becomes 20,000 inches. But that was 443 kilometres, so let's say, what, 250 miles? 200 miles? 200 miles, to take that picture, according to science, would have put the end mountain 5 miles below the horizon line. That's what science tells you. In reality, it's not. Bless you. Thank you. There is no curvature to where you think you live. There are hills, there are mountains, there's undulation, of course there is. Next time you're at the seaside, go and do it. You can take a picture of a point like a lighthouse a few hundred miles away and do it yourself. Try and work out why you can see things in reality that science is trying to lie to you about. Do the moonlight test. That's incredible. That's just simply showing you in 5 minutes that the moon does not reflect the sunlight. Okay, now, have a look at the sun next time it's out. Look at the angled rays. Make your own conclusions. Look at the firmament. Have a look about it. There are no real pictures of Earth from space, and there are no real pictures of satellites. They are all CGI that you see. Now, thank you for bearing with me on this information. If you don't know you're being lied to, you don't know there's a question to ask. So we remain in ignorance. We remain docile to the facts. Time for ignorance, as far as I'm concerned, is over. And so with the advent of the flat Earth starting in around 2014, if you typed in a phrase flat Earth, or the Earth is flat, in YouTube, which seemed to be the vehicle where the flat Earth is gaining most momentum, you get search results back of about 60,000. If you do it now, it's about 25 million, and you're talking in 3 years. So you can imagine what the exponential growth is. The same with Google, it's enormous. Look at Google Analytics for the subject. Now, lastly, and this is lastly for me, everyone says, and you've said it yourself, why? Why would they do it? What is the point? What's the motivation? Well, the first thing is, we're all stupid and we pay taxes and we serve the echelons of the elite. We don't know, it's a secret club. We use a Jewish call us goyim, which are no better than an animal because we are literally their slaves. So, what you do find out with the flat Earth is it's not a random cosmic coincidence. It's not. It didn't all come out of nothing and here we are. What you find is it's been created. This place where you live has been created. It's not what they tell you it is, it's something completely different. So when you realise it's been created, what they're doing is they are hiding the creator from you of this place. If you're religious, they are hiding God. That is it. But don't take my word for it. Don't take my word for it. This is our rocket technology superstar. Psalms 19:1. That's all he had on his thing, leaving you a little breadcrumb. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. That's it. Thanks very much. I know you're all a bit tired, it's a bit warm in here. Questions, please, if you have any.
Where's Tim Peake?
Tim Peake.
Couldn't he come?
He's a Freemason from Sandhurst. I'll show you. I would like to show you a little picture of Tim Peake. There's video of old George Bush Senior being wheeled into a NASA operations centre, but sometimes on the screens they leave stuff up they shouldn't do. And there's one of Tim Peake in front of a chroma key screen with a tennis ball on a string. And what he's doing is making the movements, looking at the thing like that. And the actual video footage, if you ever see it from NASA, is the bit where there's a bit of water. He has a bubble of water. That's the virtual reality live. So yeah, any more questions, please?
Could I just say the space station's coming over tonight?
Is it? I'll give you a clue.
20 past
It ain't
8.
real. Sorry, my love.
After that phony moon landing film, Stanley Kubrick was murdered, wasn't he?
As far as I'm aware, yes. Well, you can't have too many people involved in the deception.
No.
A, unless they're high-ranking Freemasons, and B, if they've got family and people they can tell. You don't want this getting out. It's that simple. If you start to have a critically thinking population, you're going to tear down everything because it's all false. It's all a paradigm that the reality is that they're the ones that are creating the reality for you. This isn't our reality. This is the one we're born into.
So you're saying the Russians and the Americans are best buddies in keeping this all from us?
Yeah. Every single
so the Cold War
high-ranking Cold War is just a nonsense. Cold War was something for division to put fear in the minds. Divide and conquer is the biggest tool they use right all the time. So yeah, it was there. We all lived through the Cold War. No one knew what it was. We were told everything we learn is either from school where you're indoctrinated, because they've been indoctrinated and they teach you the same old shit, or you get it from your telly. That's it. Or you get it from a newspaper. When you unplug yourself away from that and you start critically asking and thinking, it takes you down rabbit holes you might not want to go through. But I went down this one and it's a good one. It's a good one. There's a lot of proof, and it just shows you that there's a reality that we've been given that's not correct. So, lady in the back.
They spend all that money on the space program, and it was done at such a low budget. Where's the rest of the money gone? Is it money to us?
Exactly. It's like when you see.
It's so low budget.
It is. And the funny thing is with that screen, when you see the Apollo moon landing, no news company was allowed to take a direct feed. Not one. They had to video it from a projector screen. And that's what we all saw on telly. Because it had been ripped apart back in the 60s, I'm sure. I mean, even in the 60s, they had high definition colour video. And what you're told and what you're given is this crappy, rubbish nonsense. But, there you go. Andy.
A thing which always puzzled me was when you look at the moon, you always see the same face.
There you go.
And considering that the moon is going around the Earth, for it to do that, the moon would have to be rotating on its own axis at exactly the same rate as it's going around the Earth, for it to show the same face the whole time.
It doesn't, and there's no proof.
And you do need, and I've always wondered how on earth that could be.
It's nonsense. It's utter nonsense. You've got to remember that you're being deceived and you're being conditioned for something. That's the whole point of this. And people are waking up in all sorts. They're all going, oh, David Icke this, David Icke. No, not just David Icke. You forget that. You've got to get back to the reality of where your senses are working, what you can see, and start critically thinking. Otherwise, people like David Icke will tell you that there's a reptilian base behind the moon that no one can see, test, measure or see, controlling all of your thoughts down here. And he will keep his 15 million people in his trap of where he is and what he believes, without any further information, he doesn't do flat earth. I spoke to him about a month ago via email. Hopefully I'm going to see him next year, because he doesn't get this. Because his followers that pay his money, he's going to lose at least 50% once he starts talking about this. And the problem is people like David Avocado Wolf, do you know him, and other popular speakers are doing the flat earth, and David I think is going to be left behind at some point. But hopefully I'll go there next.
Is there no northern hemisphere then and southern hemisphere?
Yeah.
There is.
But it's the way we look at it differently.
So how do you explain the water going down the plug hole?
It's fancy. Put water down the plug hole that side, put the water down the plug hole that side. Not the coloured or black lads in the equator with those stupid bowls and go, oh, no, this one, yeah, then go across the road and go, oh, look at this one. It's bollocks. Do it yourself. Do it at home. Pull the tap down that way, spin it one way and spin it the other way, and all the water follows the same thing. So it's not to do with northern and southern hemisphere. Sorry. Hello.
Yeah, so did I miss something very important? Who did make it then?
We don't know.
And how long ago are we talking about?
We don't know. We don't know. Nobody knows. Because what you're being told is it's a random cosmic accident that blew up and created everything. Yeah. I mean, even to start believing that without conditioning, you think, what are you talking about? You know, where's all these motions and movements? I can't feel anything. But when you're in a car, you can feel a bit of acceleration. You can feel yourself walking. You're on a fairground ride. You can feel all these motions, which are separate, it seems, to gravity and separate to the atmosphere. It's a nonsense. Any more?
Did you say something about someone went over when you had that
We think. We don't know for sure.
Thousands of people with him, you said?
It was but we don't know. We only assume that based on the evidence we've got. It was called Operation High Jump, and there are lots of things, and there's video and picture footage scaling the wall. We don't know how far they went. We don't know what their purpose was. It was thought that Operation High Jump was that.
Well, and all those ships that you said went...
We took down 4,500 men, 30 ships, 20 odd aircraft.
People were never seen again and nothing was ever seen again?
No, I'm not saying that, no.
And do you know what the American government said they were looking for?
Yeah, they were chasing the Nazis or something.
Well, that was one thing.
It was coal, Nazis, anything. It could be anything.
There's a submarine in there. A submarine to search for coal.
You know, it's there's definitely something going on there. I mean, Antarctica, as you think, it just doesn't exist. It's not even a landmass. It's, the shape of the Earth is not what you've been programmed to believe. And that's all it is, it's programming. For the minute you're little, you're told, that's the solar system, that's where you go, 1 and 1 is 2, that's it, it's off. And because you're little, when you know all this information, when you're being taught it, you don't question adults, you're a child. It takes away all your critical thinking skills very early on. And that's it, and then you grow up in the reality that's been created.
So is global warming going to have an effect on this wall?
Don't know, mate. I mean, I would assume if there's a dome, global warming is probably, if anything, cyclical. Because I would assume in a contained environment, which is what I believe it to be, I mean, you see these plants in a jar. Do you see that when someone puts something in a jar and it stays there all its time inside a jar and it waters itself and it does all that? I mean, it could be a contained system like that, Mike.
Well, I mean, global warming, that's just going down another avenue.
Listen, another avenue of fear and another avenue of attacks.
No such thing as global warming, there's always been climate change. Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, in actual fact,
Sandbanks should have been underwater 10 years ago.
That's it. In actual fact, global warming stopped in 1998. It's not been warming up since 98.
Right. I mean, we're all deceived on some level or another. This is the one that I hope makes you go, do you know what? It is a little bit more important now. You know, I sort of get what's going on. there's a hidden hand of Jewish Freemasonry that runs from the time of our history right through to now, and I can't, that's it, that's a fact. And all this stuff, like I said, is fully researchable. You can go away, hopefully some of you will, just start going and researching, and you'll find tons of it. What I've done there today is give you some of the best bits that could perhaps get you on your way, and that's it.
I'd just like to share that question I put to you earlier on. For years I've wondered, how can you see the stars? You're on a spinning thing going round at 1,000 miles an hour. They should be streaks of light. The sun should be a streak of light.
Absolutely.
How can you see the stars?
Yeah.
I've been asking scientists and magazines, and nobody knows, has given me a sensible answer.
They can't, can they? They can't give you a sensible answer because we don't move. And the sky goes around slowly every night.
Are there stars there then? I mean,
well, we're looking at, well, we don't know what they are. We're looking at lights in the sky. We know they've been named, some of them Mars, Jupiter, whatever. We look through. NASA will give you this great big CGI planet, which is terra firma. It's not. They're frequency points of light. That's it. That's all we've got. That's it.
Thank you.
I have a concern about it in that I, many years ago, sailed across the Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
Had the great good fortune of having the dawn watch and watched the stars come up on the horizon day after day, a little higher, a little higher. I was looking at two in particular, and it took about a week before I saw some other stars around it, and I realised that it was the plough completely upside down. So how does that fit?
Seeing stars in the southern hemisphere. I knew this was coming. Right, look, what they will tell you, when you see star trails in the northern hemisphere, you can see the star trails going in a clockwise direction. And in the southern hemisphere, what we call the southern hemisphere, depending on where you're stood, they can go in the opposite direction. If you turn back round and look at the stars, it's like, let's have a look. I'll show you. It's just it's a perception thing as to where you are. Let me just get right, this will be. You're in Australia here. If you're facing that way, you will see the same stars in the clockwise rotation. If you're facing this way, you'll see them go this way and then the other way. Oh, I wish I had the thing. You've got a perspective. You have your own bubble perspective, okay? When you're looking, for example, if you see the sunlight come across the water in Swanage, you can go up by the Molam and see the same sunlight in the Swanage. You can go 2 miles the other way and it will still be coming on your feet down in the water. So everyone has their own visual perspective, and it's not something that's different. It's not something that's difficult. You see something based on your orientation on the land masses that you are. And when you think you're in the Pacific or wherever it was you were, you think you're still on a globe. You're not. You're in a completely different landmass, where in a dome-like pattern you'll see the stars go left to right from there. You turn it around, you'll see it right to left on the other way. It's a bit confusing. There is tons of research on it, and I'm trying to find something quickly to show you. But,
that doesn't really answer the question.
No, we're fine. I'll find it. Oh, we've got internet here.
Yes. I've got no idea what that...
Bear with me. Oh. You might have to wait. There's a...
I mean, it wasn't really a perception, to be fair. I was just looking at
the
stars.
It's how you see them.
And I was moving, not the stars. That's the thing.
Well, the stars move as well, Andy. I mean, if you stand still every night, you'll see them go around.
Yeah, I recognise that. But I was seeing them at the same time every morning.
You've got your phone coming up on
And
a monster.
And every day they were tracking a little higher above the horizon.
There's not a lot I could do. Yeah.
Unplug it.
Okay, that's not a bad idea actually. I'll find the.
No.
So at least we can get to the photos.
One that came up was so rude.
Right, if we can show it, I'll play it. Right, here you go. Hopefully it'll work. Good friend of mine, Eric DeBay, who obviously going to need volume.
And around us, just as you experience every day. The North Pole is the magnetic monopole center point, with Polaris the North Pole star situated directly above. Polaris is the only motionless star in the heavens, with all the other constellations, night after night, century after them, however, is facing east. They rise
This is
in
how
front
you
and
see
set behind,
the stars.
while facing west, they rise behind and set in front. So their apparent motion, angle, and inclination changes depending where you are on Earth and what direction you are facing. But their actual movement is always east to west.
That's true. I mean, it's all, you can verify it yourselves. You can verify the way they work, the way they move. You can visually see the way the stars operate yourself, rather than be told.
Well, I mean, that's the rotation of the stars around the axis of the poles of the North Star. But what I'm saying is that if the Earth is flat and you're on a flat plane, travelling across it would not change the angle at which you see the stars.
Yeah, it would. If you're in the, for example, if you're, not the best thing here, but if you're in, I don't know, where we are in England,
right?
Okay, you're going to look, because you're in the northern hemisphere at latitude, when you come where we go south, your eye's perspective will still look at, say, the Polaris, but after a while coming south, you can't see it because it literally seems to dip below the horizon because your perspective can't see that far north. For example, I don't know, say this is the North Star here, this is the UK. You can see it, not a problem. When you come further south, you can't see it because you still have a horizon, and everything above the horizon you can see in your relative perspective place. When you move places, you can't see. It's literally, it's an eye perspective thing. I'll try and do a little bit more later.
Okay.
Anybody else, anything else to close up with before we go? Because I know you're all a little bit tired and there's a lot to get through. No? Okay. Well, good luck. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you go away. I hope you look at some stuff yourself. And thanks very much.
Well done.